Important day tomorrow. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, and so many people who serve our country, unfortunately, they do suffer in silence. We have Dr. Sheryl Ziegler joining us now. I'm so glad that you're here to talk about this. You know, as a daughter of a Vietnam vet, this is, there you go. Yeah. And we talked about this before. This is front of mind, and so many veterans across the country suffer in silence. So what is it about vets and their mental health that you have seen?
Well, you know, we really know a lot about veterans because they are highly studied. We have an entire VA center that is there to really support them. So we know they come back with what we call these invisible wounds a lot of times, sometimes physical and invisible. And what that means is the things that they've seen, they may not have words for, there's trauma. And then what happens is they come back and the transition is really hard. And so to go from being in the military and being a soldier and then transitioning to your civilian life with just your family and everyday kind of experiences can be a really tough, lonely transition. And unfortunately, we see these higher rates of addiction or substance use, loneliness, depression. And so, you know, we should be talking about this even more often, but certainly on Veterans Day, I think when we're honoring our veterans, we need to acknowledge the mental health issues that they struggle with on a daily basis.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to go to the bottle than it is to go to the therapist, right? To self-medicate. Do you feel like the stigma of therapy for men is starting to lessen a little bit? I think so, but I mean, it's still kind of an obstacle for a lot of men to go sit down and talk about their feelings with like a stranger.
I think so too. I think there's a big answer to this. I mean, has stigma gotten better? Yes. However, I do think that there is a uniqueness in terms of a veteran. I still think there is the image of you're strong.
Tough soldier.
Yes, you're tough. You made us proud. And they want to be able to come back and make people just as proud in this civilian life. And so sometimes that transition is really what the crux of that really is. So I do think things are better. I also think I want to say that, you know, some veterans still do find that the right services for them are not readily or easily available.
A lot of red tape, is that what you mean?
Yeah, like red tape, the obstacles for treatment, and, you know, benefits kind of, you know, sometimes fluctuating and things like that. So I do think that certainly there's a community. We know that there's a community, but I do think that we can still do better at reducing barriers. We can probably still do better at more effective treatments, more readily and easily available. And then the messaging, this kind of conversation absolutely continues to propel veterans and men in general moving forward to seek treatment.
Yeah, because there's no shame, right? And I don't want anybody to feel shame. Do you notice that there's a difference between men or women, age, older, younger?
So one of the things that I think is a really hard fact to talk about is when we look at the suicide rates among men and then veterans. So although men in general comprise about 50% of the country, they really make up 80% of suicides. And then when we look at veterans, they have a big disproportionately outsized incidence of also dying by suicide. So we know that the combination of them just simply being a male and them being a veteran, and then on top of it, maybe more easy access to firearms. When you're in crisis and you've got a tool that could hurt you, whatever the tool is, and in this case, it is number one way that they die by suicide is through guns or firearms. That's a combination we can't come back from. And so I think there's a whole world where we have to really look at that piece and what can we do about the depression that leads to hopelessness, that in some cases also leads to suicide.
Yeah, we have to wrap up here real quick, but I mean, I was reading a stat that once there is a gun in the house, that ramps up the stats for suicide. It spikes really, really high, the risk for suicide. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great.
Dr. Ziegler, thank you so much. What an important conversation.
Yeah, thank you.